Hey guys, tonight we wake up in the middle of Victorian London, the filthiest, foggiest, most charmingly miserable city of the 19th century. You're lying on a hard straw mattress stuffed with mystery contents, wrapped in a thin wool blanket that smells like it's absorbed at least 3 times of sweat. Outside, a murky yellow haze creeps through the cracked window pane. It's not just fog, it's coal smoke, factory fumes, and horse manure vapour all blending together like a Victorian smoothie. And no, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir awake with a cough. That's your lungs reminding you that air quality is more of a suggestion in this part of town. You're in a room the size of a modern closet, shared with at least 3 other bodies. One of them is snoring, one of them smells like pickled onions and misery, and one of them just muttered something in their sleep about a rat wearing boots. You'd be surprised how often that happens here. The room is dark, even though it's technically morning. That's because Victorian London's infamous pea soup fog is doing its thing, swallowing up sunlight like it owes it money. This fog isn't just from weather. It's a sinister soup made of chimney smoke, industrial pollution, and raw sewage steam wafting up from the Thames. It clings to your clothes. It finds its way up your nose. It even has its own personality. Clingy, moody, and definitely not invited. As you sit up, the wooden floor groans under your weight, and something skitters into the shadows. Probably a mouse. Possibly a demon. Honestly, same difference here. You stumble over a pair of half shoes, because full shoes are a luxury, and fish around for your coat. It's damp. Always damp. Nothing ever fully dries here. Not your socks, not your spirit, not your vague hope that today will be any different. You open the door to the hallway, and it feels like breathing through a damp wool scarf that someone boiled in cabbage water. That's just standard olfactory ambience. Victorian buildings weren't designed with airflow in mind, they were designed with survive the cold maybe in mind. Outside your flat, the tenement stairs spiral downward like something out of a horror novel. Everything creaks. The banisters are sticky with something you don't want to investigate. A neighbour is already yelling at her husband, and 2 floors below, a baby's been crying since about 4 a.m. clock eye. Welcome to the symphony of survival. You step into the street, which is more like a narrow alley, soaked in mud, dung, and disappointment. Horse-drawn carts rattle by, their wheels kicking up muck. A man in a long coat sneezes directly into his hand, wipes it on his trousers, and carries on like it's just another Tuesday. Which it is. The smell is robust. Notes of manure, coal tar, fish heads, and something metallic you can't quite place. You instinctively pull your scarf up over your nose. If you were rich, you'd have a perfumed handkerchief. Since you're not, it's just a scarf with a questionable history and a stain you don't talk about. This is your world now, and surviving it takes more than just grit. It takes a touch of madness and a strong stomach. Historical fact time. London's population during the Victorian era exploded from around 1 million in 1800 to over 6.5 million by 1900, making it the largest city in the world at the time. But with that came urban chaos, overcrowding, and sanitation nightmares. People thought diseases came from bad air, literally that foul stench you keep sniffing. They believed it was deadly, and honestly, they weren't entirely wrong. Now, here's a fringe tidbit for you. Some Londoners tried to keep the fog at bay by setting fires inside their homes, not for warmth, but to create a competing smoke that would push the outdoor smog away from their rooms. Yes, more smoke to fight the smoke. It's like trying to clean a muddy floor with a dirtier mop. But hey, points for creativity. And here's where scholars still squabble. Some argue that Victorian London's infamous fogs were exaggerated in retrospect, made more dramatic by literature and popular media. Thank you, Charles Dickens. Others insist the fogs were worse than we'll ever comprehend, citing eyewitnesses who claim they couldn't see their hand in front of their face at high noon. The truth? Probably somewhere in between, but tonight we're going with full creepy fog. Back on the street, a chimney sweep passes you. He's about 12. He's covered in soot. He flashes a black-toothed grin and vanishes into a flue. You wonder if he has bones made of rubber or just zero regard for gravity. Probably both. You head toward the main road, boots squelching in something that hopefully used to be just mud. Carts creak by laden with coal. Women in shawls shuffle past you, balancing baskets on their hips, their faces set to default "don't talk to me" mode. A newsboy yells something about a murder, but his voice is lost in the horsehoof thunder. Suddenly, from above, a sooty droplet lands on your cheek. You look up. Bad idea. A pigeon, perched on a window ledge, makes uncomfortably intense eye contact with you. You quickly lower your gaze. That's not a fight you want. As you approach the bakery at the corner, your stomach growls. The smell of fresh bread is the one redeeming scent cutting through the swampy morning. You pause outside to savour it. Just then a man stumbles out of the shop carrying 3 loaves under one arm and a bucket of eels in the other. You try not to ask questions. Victorian London runs on eel. You just accept it. You realise you've already inhaled a week's worth of industrial dust and soot before breakfast. Congratulations. That's practically a rite of passage. You're officially part of the city now. A gritty cog in a massive, grinding machine. The sun never fully comes out. It just sort of hints that it might exist, behind a wall of smoke, and gives up by mid-morning. People shuffle along, shoulders hunched, scarves tight. You blend in, you survive by not standing out. And yet, despite everything, the filth, the noise, the smell, there's something oddly comforting about it all. The rhythm, the repetition, the fact that somehow everyone keeps going. The sheer stubbornness of it all. It's ugly, yes, but it's alive. You're part of it now. Your stomach's growling now, loud enough that the old woman sweeping her doorstep across the alley gives you a glance, half suspicious, half amused. That's Victorian London for you. People are used to noises in the street, dogs barking, drunkards singing, someone screaming about fire, and a good old-fashioned digestive complaint. You're just part of the mix. Breakfast. Right, you need to eat something before your body burns through its own bones for fuel. But in this time and place, breakfast is more a vague hope than a guarantee. There are no supermarkets, no drive-through, and you're definitely not hopping on an app to order poached eggs and oat milk lattes. What you are doing is looking for something cheap, edible, and preferably not crawling with life. You turn into a narrow side street, barely wide enough for 2 people to pass without touching. It's damp. It's always damp. You breathe in the scent of stale cabbage and damp coal smoke. A cat skitters past your feet. You think it's a cat, but with how filthy everything is, it might have been a particularly fast-moving clump of chimney soot. With whiskers. Your first stop is the baked goods stall near the rag and bone man's cart. He's shouting something about old bones and broken umbrellas, as if that's a totally normal business model. The baker, or at least the man pretending to be one, has a tray of rolls on display. They're more grey than golden. Some have a crust that looks suspiciously like it's been rebaked 4 or 5 times. But they're cheap. That's all that matters. You hand over a coin that's seen better centuries and receive a roll in return. It's warmish. As you bite into it, there's a crunch. Not from anything crispy, but from grit. The flour's been cut with chalk dust to stretch the supply. It's a common trick. Not deadly, just historical fact break. Many Victorian bakers routinely adulterated their flour with plaster of Paris, chalk, or alum to save money. It wasn't illegal for a while, and even when it was, enforcement was about as reliable as a leaky bucket. This meant your bread might have contained more minerals than your average multivitamin, just not the good kind. Still, you chew, you swallow, you pretend it was good, you consider it a small victory. The fringe fact? People were so used to bad bread, they developed a taste for it. Some actually preferred the sturdy texture, like it made them feel more substantial inside. You can't decide if that's resilience or a cry for help. You wander down the street, past the fishmonger's stall where the catch of the day looks like it's been catching disease more than sunlight. The fish are grey around the edges. A few stare back at you with lifeless judgment. One of them winks. You're not sure if it's a hallucination, but you keep walking. You find another vendor, this one selling what he swears is pork. You don't ask questions. It's shaped like meat and comes with mustard, which may or may not have expired in the 1830s. You hand over another coin and accept your fate. But the real prize of breakfast? Tea. Not fancy tea, not with milk and sugar, unless you're posh. No, this is basic, brackish black tea, served from a cracked tin pot, ladled into a tin mug that hasn't been properly cleaned since the Crimean War. It's bitter, it's burnt, and it might contain more lead than caffeine. But you sip it anyway, because it's hot. You sit down on a crate in a corner, your meal balanced on your knee. Around you, others do the same. Dock workers, chimney sweeps, paperboys, washerwomen. Everyone eats in silence, heads low, like they're not entirely sure if they should be grateful or insulted by what's on their plate. A horse clip clops by, dragging a milk cart. The milkman shouts about the freshness of his product, though everyone knows most of it's been watered down to the consistency of regret. Some families even boil it twice just to make sure it won't give them the runs, which, frankly, is a best-case scenario. Still a debate moment. Historians still argue about just how malnourished the average Londoner really was during the Victorian era. Some records suggest chronic undernourishment, especially among the poor, while others argue that people adapted well enough, thanks to a wide variety of street foods, however questionable in content. The answer might lie somewhere in the daily struggle, a stomach half filthy, always a little uncertain. Suddenly, there's a commotion. A street preacher climbs onto a box and begins shouting about sin, fire, and damnation. You sip your tea. Nothing wakes you up like a good old fire and brimstone warning while eating a pie filled with mystery meat. The preacher points at random people and accuses them of things: gluttony, sloth, improper bonnet usage. You duck your head, just in case. You finish your roll. The last bite is mostly crust and disappointment. Your stomach protests, but at least it's not empty anymore. That's a win. Kind of. As you stand up, a woman selling roasted chestnuts waves you over. You wish you had more coin. The warm smell is the only nice thing your nose has encountered all morning. But no, you've spent your pence. You'll have to settle for breathing in someone else's snack, like a Kenginsian ghost. You begin walking again, back toward the main road. You pass a group of barefoot children laughing around a puddle, splashing each other with water that you're 98% sure is toxic. One of them offers you something wrapped in old newspaper. You politely decline. That's probably for the best. Victorian children are wild cards, sometimes generous, sometimes feral, always suspiciously sticky. Your coat's heavier now, not from food, but from dampness. Moisture clings to everything here. It's like London wants to marinate its people before consuming them. Your collar sticks to your neck, your boots squelch with every step. You start humming something cheerful, mostly to annoy the fog. That's when the dustman rolls by with his cart, collecting ash from doorsteps. He tips his hat at you, even though you don't know each other. That's one thing about Victorian London. It may be a hive of grime and misery, but it's got manners. Sort of. You glance up. The fog's lifting just a little. You can see the spire of a nearby church stabbing into the grey sky. Birds circle above, probably looking for anything small enough to eat. You mutter a silent thank you that you are, at least temporarily, that on that menu. With breakfast done, such as it was, you prepare to start your day in earnest. Work awaits, streets await, danger awaits. But hey, you've made it through breakfast without dying or throwing up. That's called a win around here. One last thing. Remember that roll you ate? There's a good chance it was baked in an oven fueled by coal dust and rat droppings. But you know, Victorian London may try to break you with every soggy crust and every foul breath of air, but you're not going down easy. Now, brush the crumbs off your coat, tighten your scarf, and get ready to cross the street, because that's where the real danger begins. You wouldn't think crossing the street could be the most dangerous part of your day, but here in Victorian London, it's practically a sport, one with no rules, no referees, and a high chance of being crushed by a cart full of turnips. Welcome to the 19th century's version of urban roulette. The morning crowd is thick now. Shopkeepers are opening their shutters. Horses are snorting. Market boys are yelling. A stray dog is chasing a wheelbarrow with more energy than most humans possess before noon. You step off the curb, carefully, and immediately have to leap back as a delivery wagon barrels past, its wheels inches from your toes. The driver yells something rude and incomprehensible, likely referencing your parentage. There are no pedestrian crossings, no stop signs, no traffic lights, just chaos, hooves, and hope. You take a breath, through your scarf, of course, because the smell of horse manure and hot steam still clings to the morning air like an uninvited guest. The steam, by the way, is rising from underground grates that may or may not lead to London's early sewer systems. Or to hell. Honestly, it's hard to tell some days. You try again. This time you step into the street and start weaving between carts. One is carrying barrels of beer, another is loaded with bricks, a third is full of cabbages, and is driven by a man who looks like he hasn't blinked since Queen Victoria took the throne. The horses don't care that you're a person. They're big, impatient, and trained to trample anything not made of wood or iron. You dodge left, then right. Your boot slips in something slick. You don't look down. Looking down only confirms your worst fears in this city. You press forward instead, your arms tucked close to avoid being clotheslined by a wooden cart shaft. Victory seems near, until a whistle blows and a group of bobbies charges down the street in formation, chasing a pickpocket who darts past you like a shadow. One officer crashes into a bread stall. Crumbs fly. You take a deep breath and keep walking. Historical fact drop. During the Victorian era, the number of horse-drawn vehicles in London reached over 50,000 by the late 1800s. That's a staggering amount of traffic in narrow streets not designed for volume. Accidents were common, and being run over with a legitimate documented cause of death. Some newspapers even published a particularly unsettling fringe detail. Some Londoners actually hired crossing sweepers, usually children or beggars, to clear a cleanish path across muddy, dangerous intersections for a few coins. These kids would wield brooms and leap ahead of well-dressed pedestrians, clearing a strip of filth just wide enough to preserve one's boots. You don't have the luxury of a sweeper. Your boots are taking a beating today. Suddenly, something falls from above. You hear a sharp crack as a clay chimney pot shatters in the street, 2 feet from where you just stood. A nearby woman screams. You stagger backward and stare at the debris. Bricks, soot, and roof tiles. London's old buildings don't just decay, they occasionally attack. Ongoing scholarly debate. Historians still debate whether the rate of structural accidents, like falling masonry, was the result of poor construction, relentless coal smoke eroding buildings, or simply negligence. Some argue Victorian builders were ahead of their time. Others claim they were reckless with safety. Whatever the case, the fact remains. In this city, even the architecture is out to get you. You finally make it to the other side of the street, heart racing, hands sweating, boots covered in a new layer of London's favourite condiment, wet grime. You pause for a moment on the curb, catching your breath. A man next to you is furiously scrubbing his boots with a piece of newspaper. He glances at you and mutters, "Lost a good pair of socks last week, drowned in a puddle." You nod solemnly. You understand. You walk a little farther along the pavement. The street continues its circus routine. Circle of Life, Victorian edition. You turn a corner and nearly run straight into a horse's backside. The smell hits you before you even process what's happening. The animal flicks its tail lazily, completely unbothered. Its rider, perched atop a sleek black saddle, glares down at you from under a tall hat. He's clearly from a better part of town. His boots polished, his count velvet, his expression etched in disdain. He clicks his tongue and guides the horse around you as if you were an inconvenience in his royal procession. You bow dramatically after him, just to be petty. He doesn't look back. Keep walking. The market road opens up now into a wider thoroughfare. Wider, but not calmer. Omnibuses clatter by, crammed full of passengers. These double-decker carriages are pulled by teams of horses and look like rolling death traps. You eye one warily. Some poor soul is trying to climb aboard while it's still moving. He misses the step and falls into a puddle. A vendor yells, "Hey!" Sympathy comes in strange forms here. You cross another street. This time, you're clever. You follow closely behind a butcher's boy, who's pushing a cart with 2 pig carcasses. No one dares mess with a boy transporting meat. He's your moving shield. You tail him across, ducking your head and pretending you're part of the delivery. The boy doesn't notice. Finally, you're on the far side of the road. You glance back. In the 10 minutes it took to cross, at least 3 carts nearly collided. A dog started a turf war, and a man dropped his hat in the gutter and then decided not to retrieve it. Probably for the best. You sit on a low wall for a moment and let your heart rate settle. A gentle drizzle begins to fall, because of course it does. The sky over London is eternally grey, like the city itself is too tired to choose a weather setting. A woman next to you opens a parasol, one with holes in it. She's humming softly to herself and feeding pigeons bits of crust. You nod at her. She nods back. That's all the conversation anyone has energy for today. You take stock. You've crossed 2 streets, dodged 5 carts, almost got brained by falling masonry, and stepped in something you'll pretend was mud. And you're still alive. That's a wind. You've now walked half the morning. You've survived the fog, the food, and the stampede of carts that pass for traffic. But now, your greatest challenge yet, nature calls, and she's not whispering. You look around. Surely there's an outhouse, a public loo, or a corner of the city with at least a shred of privacy. Ha! That's adorable. Victorian London doesn't really do toilets, not the way you're thinking. There are no neat public restrooms with soap dispensers and motion-sensing flushes. In your world, this would be a minor inconvenience. In this world, it's a life-altering situation involving buckets, alleys, shame, and possibly a bribe. You duck into a side alley that smells like someone already tried to solve your problem here, several times. You quickly decide against it. You're desperate, but you still have standards. Low standards, yes, but not no standards. You consider heading back home to use the chamber pot under your bed. That's what most people do. Every tenement flat has one, or at least tries to. It's a battered tin bowl that holds secrets no one should ever uncover. You may have to share it with roommates or family members, or that one cousin who always insists on checking for leaks. You don't ask. You don't want to know. The problem isn't going. It's getting rid of it afterward. Because here's the system. In the morning or evening, you, or someone equally unlucky, must empty the chamber pot. Where? Well, there are 2 options. Option 1. The privy in the yard. It's a wooden shack with a hole that opens into a pit that may or may not be deep enough anymore. If you're lucky, it's not frozen over. If you're very lucky, the door locks. If you're unbelievably lucky, the smell hasn't crawled up the walls to take permanent residence. Option 2. The street. Yes, the street. Emptying the pot out the window was technically illegal, but enforcement was, shall we say, sporadic. Most people still did it, usually with the helpful shout, "Guardiloo!" which translates roughly to "move if you value your life and slash or hat historical fact time." Until the mid to late 1800s, London had no real sewage system. Most human waste was tossed into cesspools, street gutters, or the Thames itself. It wasn't until 1858's Great Stink, when the river literally reeked so badly that Parliament fled, that London began building its revolutionary underground sewer system thanks to engineer Joseph Bazalgette. Before them, buckets. Buckets forever. You make your way toward a known public facility, and by that we mean a wooden structure behind a pub with a sign that says, "Gents." It's a glorified hole in the ground with planks and a bucket beneath. You get in line behind 3 other men, one whistling, one reading a crumpled newspaper, and one looking deeply traumatized. When it's your turn, you hold your breath, step in, and instantly regret every decision you've ever made. The smell hits you like a wall. There's no ventilation, the door doesn't close fully, and someone has scribbled what you think is a dirty limerick on the back wall in chalk. You do what you came to do, in record time, and stumble out into the daylight, gasping like you've just surfaced from a deep-sea dive. You pat your coat pockets, searching for something, anything, to wipe your hands with. You settle on your scarf. Regret follows. Hygiene isn't really a thing here. Germ theory is still in its awkward teenage years. Fringe tidbit. Some wealthier homes had early flushing toilets by the mid-19th century, but the mechanisms were notoriously unreliable. One infamous account tells of a gentleman who flushed and ended up flooding the entire lower floor of his home. The pipe reversed. That's all we're saying. Meanwhile, in the working class world, some people paid to use necessary houses or public privies operated by enterprising locals. It cost a farthing or two, and the quality ranged from barely tolerable to possibly haunted. You didn't go for comfort, you went for privacy and maybe safety. You shake your head as you step away from the gents. One man gives you a knowing look as he enters after you. Poor soul. He'll learn. You head back toward the main road, passing a group of women chatting outside a wash house. One of them complains about her upstairs neighbour's chamber pot habits. Apparently, he's been dumping it out the back window again. Right into my cabbage patch, she says with a scowl. The others gasp in horror. That's produce. Ongoing scholarly debate. There's still some academic squabbling over how common window dumping truly was by the mid to late 1800s. Some argue it was rare by then, replaced by yard privies and more regulated waste removal. Others insist it remained rampant in poorer districts well into the late century. But first-hand accounts, and honestly the smell. You keep walking, and pass a man pushing a cart labelled night soil. You know better than to look too closely. He's a night soil collector, one of the few brave souls who clean cesspits by night. He's probably the most essential worker in London, and definitely the most unpopular dinner guest. A kid runs by with a bucket, sloshing something unpleasant. His bare feet slap the stones. He's singing a rhyme that ends with the word poo, because Victorian children, like modern ones, are absolutely gross. You marvel at how everything in this city seems to be covered in a thin layer of something. The streets, the walls, the people. It's like London has chosen a texture and committed fully, sticky and vaguely biological. Still, despite the horrors, there's a system to it all. A rhythm, a grimy ballet of people relieving themselves, cleaning up after each other, and pretending it's all completely normal. And it kind of is. For them. You take comfort in the fact that everyone smells a little bit terrible, so no one judges. Perfume is more like a declaration of wealth than a scent strategy. If you're stinking up the place, congratulations. You're just like everyone else. You pass a grocer's stall selling overripe apples and bruised potatoes. The grocer waves. You wave back. That small act of humanity feels weirdly comforting. Even when the world smells like fermented sewage and spoiled meat, a kind smile still counts for something. You turn the corner and see a man shaking out a rug. Dust explodes into the air like a Victorian fireworks show. You duck, cough, and power walk past. A cat watches you from a windowsill with disdain. You've done it. You survived the bathroom quest. You've emerged. Slightly worse than you went in, but upright. You've navigated the most primal human need in a world where plumbing is a luxury, sanitation is a myth, and privacy is whatever corner you can defend with your coat. You walk on, a little stronger, a little smellier, but still, against all odds. You thought you were adjusting to the city's scent. You were wrong. It hits you just as you round the corner from the rug dusting fiasco. A wall of stench so thick it feels like a second atmosphere. The kind of air you don't breathe so much as chew. You gag a little, involuntarily. Everyone does. It's part of the morning routine. You instinctively reach for your scarf again, pulling it tighter around your face. But it's damp, and worse, it now carries the faint trace of the public loo experience you'd rather forget. You curse your past self for using it as a napkin substitute. If only you had a perfumed handkerchief like the upper class. Something soaked in lavender or rosewater. Instead, all you've got is wool and regret. This, you quickly learn, is the meat district. A series of interconnected market lanes where butchers do their business in the open. No refrigeration, no separation between shop and street. Sheep carcasses swing lazily from hooks. Blood puddles beneath sawhorses. Stray dogs linger nearby, hoping for a dropped scrap. You pass one that appears to be licking an organ. You do not investigate further. A vendor slices a haunch of something red and vaguely glistening. He smiles with pride. "Fresh this morning?" he calls. You nod politely while backing away. Your stomach makes a noise like a dying accordion. Historical fact time. In Victorian London, Smithfield Market was the city's meat hub, a chaotic centre of trade where live animals were slaughtered on site and hygiene laws were optional. Butchers tossed offal into the street or nearby gutters, where it mixed beautifully with horse manure, garbage and sewage. The resulting aroma became legendary. In fact, wealthy shoppers often brought scented handkerchiefs to press over their noses while shopping. The poor? Well, they just breathed faster and hoped their sinuses would surrender. Now here's the fringe tidbit. Some people, yes, really, claimed they liked the smell. They said it added to the authenticity of city life. There are records of Londoners writing fondly about the tang of the streets, as if rotting lard and spoiled intestines were part of the city's charming bouquet. Nostalgia truly is a mysterious force. You press onward through the fog, which now seems more like a blessing. It dulls the sight of the horrors around you. A man pushes a wheelbarrow stacked with skinned rabbits. Another is elbow deep in a pig's ribcage. You try not to look directly at anything too long, lest your brain file it under nightmare fuel. Then, out of nowhere, comes the tanner's shop. You thought the meat district was bad. You thought wrong again. The smell of a Victorian tannery is like nothing you've ever known. It's sharp, sour, and somehow ancient, like death wrapped in vinegar and dipped in ammonia. Tanning leather back then involved soaking animal hides in lime, urine, and dog feces. Yes, you read that correctly. These were essential ingredients. And no, the workers didn't wear gloves. They stirred vats with bare arms and feet. You almost feel dizzy. A man walks by, cheerfully humming, covered from elbow to ankle in brown sludge. He smells like he's just emerged from the underworld's compost heap. And yet, this is his Tuesday. Maybe even his best Tuesday. Ongoing scholarly debate. Some historians argue that Londoners were so accustomed to filth that they truly didn't notice the stench after a while. What today's scientists call olfactory fatigue. Others claim they were acutely aware of it, complaining constantly, even in letters and newspaper columns. But the debate rages on. Did they just run out of options? You keep walking, moving quickly now, trying not to let the scent become part of your soul. A sudden gust of wind makes it worse, carrying with it the perfume of rotting produce, manure, and something that might have once been fish, or possibly human. You choose to believe it's fish. A woman nearby drops her cabbage and mutters, "Smells better than the river, at least." You both chuckle darkly, because it's not true. You finally find momentary refuge at a bakery window, not because you're hungry, but because the scent of fresh bread is the only good smell for 10 blocks. You stand there, breathing it in like oxygen. The baker inside waves. He sees people like you often. But peace never lasts long in this city. A coal cart rattles past, spilling black dust into the air. The ground trembles beneath it. Ash flutters down onto your coat like evil snow. You're coughing again before you know it. You glance down at your hands. They're smudged with soot and something else. You don't know when you touched anything, but here you are. Filthy again. London doesn't wait for you to make contact. It climbs onto you like an uninvited guest at a dinner party, one that eats your soup and never leaves. Across the street, you spot a group of well-dressed ladies walking briskly, each one holding a small lace-trimmed handkerchief pressed daintily to her nose. You envy them, not just for the fabric, but for the blissful illusion of separation from the world. They smell violets. You smell beef trimmings and Victorian doom. You finally find a spot to sit, an overturned crate near a broken lamppost. You exhale, watching the fog curl from your lips. A man beside you is smoking a pipe filled with something vaguely herbal. You nod. He nods. No one speaks. Another man walks by, pushing a cart filled with bones. Just bones. He whistles as he goes, tapping rhythmically on the ribs like a xylophone. "Selling them," someone calls out. "No," the man replies. "They sing to me." You decide not to unpack that. You've now passed through 3 different odour zones: meat, tannery, coal. You are a walking sampler plate of Victorian London's least loved smells. Your nose burns. Your eyes water. Your spirit begins to detach from your body out of sheer survival instinct. And you know what? You're still going. That's something. Because this is a city that dares you to survive it. It tests your every sense. It grinds your willpower into coal dust. But if you can make it through a walk without vomiting or crying, that's a badge of honor. You've earned a rest, a break, a moment of stillness. You take one last sniff of your scarf. Bad idea. Very bad idea. Maybe tomorrow you'll find yourself a real handkerchief. A clean one, with roses on it. But not today. Today you're just glad your nose still works. Even if you kind of wish it didn't. You've made it through the morning fog, dodged horse-drawn traffic, survived the smell assault, and answered nature's call without incident. Now, it's time for the part of your day you might enjoy least. Work. Not because the job is fun. Spoiler alert, it's not, because it's the only way to keep your stomach from eating itself, and to have a place to collapse at night. You shuffle toward the factory gates, passing rows of grimy tenements, where the windows are cracked, walls stained with soot, and the residents look like they've forgotten what fresh air feels like. You join the steady stream of labourers lining up to clock in. Most wear patched clothes, patched spirits, and the kind of tired eyes that have seen one too many dawns in a row. Your job, today, factory hand, or if you're lucky, a spinner in the textile mill, or, if you're cursed, a dock worker unloading rotten cargo on the Thames. Whatever it is, you're getting paid pennies. Literally. The wage system is straightforward and brutal. The average labourer earns about threepence for a 12-hour day, if they're lucky. Sometimes less. You clutch your worn leather purse and count your coins. You wonder how far that will stretch. Historical fact check. The average wage for unskilled workers in Victorian London hovered between 3 and 6 pence per day during the mid-19th century. To put that in perspective, a loaf of bread cost about a penny, a pint of beer about 2 pence, and a pair of sturdy boots. Well, you'd better save up, because that's weeks of wages. Poverty was the norm for many, not the exception. Your supervisor, a gruff man with a permanently furrowed brow and a whistle that sounds like a dying steam engine, calls out orders. You get assigned to a hot, noisy and overcrowded machine room where cotton dust floats in the air like invisible death. The machinery grinds relentlessly, and the air is thick with the smell of oil, sweat and despair. Your hands, already calloused from years of work, are tasked with keeping the machines fed, fixed and moving. One slip, one moment of distraction, and you risk losing a finger or worse. Safety regulations? Ha! Those are for the wealthy. As the hours crawl by, your stomach rumbles. There's no time for lunch. Only a brief pause to shove a stale bread crust into your mouth and wash it down with water from a shared jug. You glance around at your co-workers, some coughing violently from the cotton dust, others rubbing their sore backs. Everyone looks as exhausted as you feel. Fringe tidbit. Some factory owners deliberately kept wages low and conditions poor to maximise profits. Yet, a few did experiment with early versions of employee welfare, providing basic medical care or short breaks. The famous industrialist Robert Owen, for instance, championed improved factory conditions, but he was the exception, not the rule. Your thoughts drift to your family, if you're lucky enough to have one. Maybe there's a wife waiting at home, a handful of kids growing faster than you can earn. You think about the cost of shoes for the youngest, rationed coal for winter, the threadbare blankets. You push those thoughts away, not because you don't care, but because you have to keep working to afford the bare necessities of life. Your supervisor blows the whistle sharply, signalling a break. You stretch cramped muscles, drink water and lean against the wall. A fellow worker lights a cheap tobacco pipe and offers you a puff. You accept. The smoke fills your lungs with a dull warmth, a fleeting comfort from the cold reality. Nearby, a group of children, too young for proper work permits but working anyway, laugh and trade jokes. Your innocence seems misplaced here. You envy it, even as you wonder how long it will last. Flawly debate. Economists and historians argue over how much Victorian wages kept families out of absolute destitution. Some claim wages, though low, were enough if spent frugally. Others counter that chronic poverty, illness and unpredictable work hours made survival a daily gamble. The truth? For many, Life was a constant tightrope walk over hunger and hardship. You glance down at your threadbare coat. It's too thin for winter and too thick for summer. It smells faintly of smoke and desperation. You recall a story told by an elderly man in your neighbourhood about how coal soot was considered a badge of honour among workers. But tonight, when you return home, you'll look in a cracked mirror and see nothing but a tired face framed by grime. You finish your break and step back to your machine. Hours stretch ahead. You remind yourself that this grind is your lifeline. Without it, there's nothing. As you work, your hands ache, your back protests, and your lungs fill with dust. But your spirit, that's harder to break. Because this city may take your health, your comfort, even your dignity, but it cannot take your will to survive. You know that the coins you earn today are the same ones that will buy you a loaf of bread, a ticket on a crowded omnibus, a night in a tenement, and maybe, just maybe, a fleeting moment of peace. You remind yourself, every penny counts. Every hour worked is a small victory. Every breath is a chance to fight another day. And in Victorian London, that's saying something. You survive your morning toil, and now the clock signals it's time for lunch, or what passes for it in Victorian London. Your stomach growls like a caged beast, and you realise you're not alone. The streets echo with the hungry murmurs and clinking coins of thousands just like you. You head toward the pie stall, a small wooden cart painted with fading letters promising meat pies. You step up, coin in hand, and prepare to gamble your lunch on a mystery that's as much about survival as it is about taste. The vendor, a weather-beaten man with a stained apron and a grin missing 2 teeth, welcomes you with a nod. His pies are steaming, their golden crusts cracked slightly from the heat. You reach out and pick one up. It's warm, heavier than you expect. The crust is thick and crumbly, the smell vaguely familiar but also suspicious. You know better than to ask what's inside. It's not uncommon for these pies to contain a mix of leftover meat, offal, and sometimes less savoury ingredients that would make a modern stomach revolt. Some say the famous mystery meat could include parts from cats, dogs, or even rats, though official records never confirm this. Better not to think about it. Historical fact: meat pies were a staple for working-class Londoners because they were portable, filling, and affordable. Pies were often made with cheaper cuts and scraps, including organ meats, which were perfectly nutritious but less palatable to wealthier classes. The street men's penny pies were often the only hot food some workers got all day. You bite into the crust, the flaky pastry crumbling between your fingers and falling onto the dirty street. The filling is rich, salty, and somewhat chewy. You try not to dwell on the origin of each bite. A stray dog eyes your pie hungrily, and you wave it off, knowing that sharing your meal would mean going hungry. Besides, this city is no place to be kind to dogs or to your lunch. Nearby, other workers gather around similar stools, exchanging gossip and grim humour. A chimney sweep with blackened cheeks laughs loudly, telling a tale about falling down a flue, while a woman in a patched shawl offers a sympathetic smile. The market buzzes with life, despite the grime and hardship. Fringe tidbit: some Victorian street vendors were known to sprinkle their pies with a bit of cayenne pepper or other spices, not for flavour, but to mask unpleasant tastes or odours. If you bit into a pie and felt a sudden heat, it was less culinary choice and more clever deception. You blink away tears, thankful that the burning sensation drowns out your existential dread. As you eat, your mind wanders to the River Thames. The river, while the lifeblood of London, is also its great cesspool. The stench wafts faintly on the breeze, reminding you that much of the city's waste, human and animal. Scholarly debate. There is ongoing discussion among historians about the nutritional value of typical working-class diets during the Victorian era. Some argue that, despite the unappetizing components, these diets were surprisingly balanced due to the variety of food sources, while others highlight chronic deficiencies and malnutrition as rampant issues, especially among children and the elderly. The sun peeks briefly through the smoky clouds, casting a dim light over the busy street. You finish your pie, scraping your fingers on your coat to catch the last crumbs. You toss the paper wrapping into a nearby gutter, which may or may not have been the origin of those crumbs in the first place. A group of children rush past, laughing and chasing a hoop. One stumbles near a puddle of what you fervently hope is rainwater, but life in London has taught you to expect the worst. You look away quickly. You feel a moment of gratitude for this simple meal. It's nothing fancy, but it's warmth and substance, and it's yours. You know that many go hungry or survive on dry bread and gruel. For now, you are fortunate. The vendor calls out to you, "Come back soon, the pies won't eat themselves." You give a tired smile and nod, knowing you will, because tomorrow the grind continues and the pie stall waits. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve and prepare to step back into the relentless pace of the city, wondering what afternoon trials await. Perhaps a visit to the river, a glimpse of the medical ward, or a detour past the workhouse. The day is long, and survival is an ongoing game of chance. You tuck your hands into your pockets and trudge forward, pie crumbs still clinging to your coat. London's streets swallow you once more, a river of faces and stories, all drifting through the same fog, the same struggle. Your footsteps echo softly as you disappear into the crowd, ready for whatever comes next. You step away from the bustling market streets and make your way toward the banks of the River Thames. It's the lifeblood of London, the artery through which the city breathes, transports goods, and grows. But today it's something else entirely. A murky, slow-moving soup of sadness, filth, and the accumulated misery of millions. You stand on the edge of the embankment and look down. The water is dark, thick, and almost viscous. More sludge than river. Floating on the surface are bits of wood, discarded rags, and unidentifiable blobs that you don't want to think about too hard. Every so often a rat darts across the surface like a furty speedboat, followed closely by a brave gull diving for whatever scraps the river might offer. A strong stench rises, blending sewage, rotten fish, and the unmistakable aroma of decay. It curls around your nose, filling your lungs with every breath. You cover your face again with your scarf and try not to gag, but the smell sinks into your clothes, your hair, your skin. London's great stink lives here every day. Historical fact: the Thames was famously described by contemporaries as a sewer by the mid-19th century. The river was the city's main drainage channel, receiving waste from homes, factories, and the many cesspools lining its banks. The infamous Great Stink of 1858, when the smell became unbearable even to Parliament, finally spurred massive public works, leading to the construction of a modern sewer system under Joseph Bazalgette's direction. You watch as a barge moves slowly along the river, its hull scraping against the grimy water. The crew tosses out a bucket of something brown and thick, probably more waste, without a second thought. You wonder how they stomach it, working so close to the river every day. Beyond the riverbank, you glimpse the Houses of Parliament, their grand facades smudged with soot and grime. The contrast between the stately buildings and the foul river is stark, almost surreal. Fringe tidbit: some Londoners believed the Thames was inhabited by strange creatures born of the sludge and filth. Tales of giant rats, mutated fish, and even monstrous river serpents circulated among dock workers and children. Whether myth or overactive imagination, the idea of a living, dangerous river added to the city's mystery. You step back from the water's edge and make your way to a nearby public pump, where a few residents fill buckets with water. You peer at the liquid, wondering if it's safe. Boiling water is a luxury many can't afford, and waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid are common killers. Every sip is a risk, every drink a roll of the dice. Scholarly debate. Historians debate how much the contaminated Thames contributed to public health crises in Victorian London. Some argue that poor sanitation was the primary cause of cholera outbreaks, while others point to contaminated wells and poor hygiene practices. The reality is complicated. The river was a vector for disease, but the overall conditions... A child playing nearby slips in the mud, laughing despite being covered head to toe in grime. You smile briefly, reminded that life goes on amid the squalor. As you walk away from the river, you catch sight of a man with a cart marked fresh fish. You hesitate. Fresh is a relative term in this city. You've heard stories of fish kept alive in barrels of polluted water, barely clinging to life until sold at market. Some say that eating such fish was healthier than eating meat pies, but that's hardly a comforting thought. You pass a group of women washing clothes on the riverbank, scrubbing with vigour despite the foul water. Their hands are red and cracked, their faces set in grim determination. Laundry day is a brutal affair here, with clothes rarely getting truly clean. You think about the river's role in the city's life, a giver and taker of fortunes. It provides fish, transport and power, but also sickness and death. The Thames is a reflection of London itself, majestic, vital, and deeply flawed. You take a deep breath, carefully, and press on, leaving the river's dark waters behind. You've walked through the fog, eaten dubious food, survived the streets, and even peered into the grimy Thames, but all that exposure takes its toll. You're feeling feverish, your head heavy and your limbs aching. You're sick, really sick, and now comes one of the hardest parts of life in Victorian London, dealing with illness. You make your way to a local doctor's office, a small dark room above a draper's shop. The doctor, a middle-aged man in a stained white coat, greets you with a weary expression. His tools are basic, a stethoscope of sorts, a few leeches in a jar, and a book that looks like it's been through a fire. He examines you with hands that tremble slightly, his brow furrowed. Historical fact: Victorian medicine was a mixture of advancing science and stubborn superstition. While figures like Florence Nightingale were revolutionising nursing and hospitals, most doctors still relied heavily on bloodletting, purging and leeches to treat patients. Germ theory was not yet universally accepted. Many believed diseases were caused by miasma, bad air or imbalances in the body's humour. The doctor asks about your symptoms, but his knowledge is limited. He suspects you have ague, cholera, or maybe consumption, tuberculosis, common illnesses in the city. His advice is vague. Rest, avoid the damp and try some herbal tea. If you're lucky, he might provide a tincture or a potion with questionable ingredients. You watch as he prepares a cup of tea, adding a pinch of powdered willow bark, the precursor to aspirin. It smells bitter, like burnt leaves and regret. Fringe tidbit: some Victorian remedies were truly bizarre. Patients sometimes drank concoctions containing mercury, arsenic, or even opium. While these could sometimes alleviate symptoms, they often caused more harm. You wonder if your doctor's tea might be a slow poison or a cure. As you sip the medicine, the doctor discusses your lifestyle, noting your exposure to the river and poor sanitation. He warns of cholera outbreaks and advises caution, though you know the warnings mean little when you live in the heart of the city. You leave the office feeling no better and wonder how anyone survives here. The hospital system is overwhelmed, and charity hospitals often turn away those without means. Home care is mostly provided by family, if they're healthy enough. Scholarly debate. There's ongoing discussion about how effective Victorian medical practices truly were. Some historians argue that, despite crude methods, many doctors genuinely cared and made advances that laid foundations for modern medicine. Others contend that harmful treatments and ignorance caused unnecessary suffering. It's likely a mix of both. You decide to rest for the afternoon, but the city doesn't slow. Outside, the street noise carries on. Vendors hawking their wares, children playing, horses clattering. Your fever spikes, and you drift between sleep and waking, haunted by coughing fits and chills. Through your fevered haze, you recall hearing about an experimental treatment. Vaccines were beginning to emerge for diseases like smallpox, but those were luxuries unavailable to most. You imagine the future when diseases like cholera might be prevented, clean water is common, and doctors understand germs. For now, you're stuck in the present. As evening falls, you wrap yourself in a thin blanket and listen to the city's dark chorus. The distant bell tolling, the muffled sobs from an alley, the steady drip of water from a leaking pipe. You're sick, you're vulnerable, but you're still here. And tomorrow, you'll try again. You wake the next morning with a rasping cough lodged deep in your throat, a constant reminder that the city's dust and soot have infiltrated your lungs and won't be leaving any time soon. Today, you're not just surviving the streets or the smells, you're confronting one of Victorian London's most notorious and overlooked hazards, the chimney sweep boys. If the city itself doesn't get you, these tiny workers might. You trudge toward the row of narrow houses with tall chimneys, slim towers reaching like crooked fingers into the grey sky, stained black with years of coal smoke. These chimneys, meant to carry the toxic air out of homes, paradoxically become traps for children who risk everything to climb inside and clean the soot and ash from their inside walls. You see the first of them, little lads no older than 8 or 9, covered head to toe in soot, their faces nearly unrecognizable beneath layers of grime. Their eyes gleam with a mix of mischief and exhaustion, reflecting a life you can barely imagine. Their fingers are raw, their bodies scrawny, but their spirits are... Historical fact. The use of child chimney sweeps was widespread in Victorian London, especially before the Chimney Sweepers and Chimneys Regulation Act of 1840, which was largely ineffective at first. Children were preferred because their small bodies could fit into tight flues. Many were orphans or poor children sold or tricked into the trade, climbing dangerous narrow chimneys to scrape soot by hand or with primitive brushes. Injuries and deaths were common. Boys could get stuck, suffocate or fall from dizzying heights. You watch as one boy, no taller than your knee, is hoisted up a chimney shaft by a rope tied around his waist. His breath comes fast, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and resolve. Below, the sweep master, gruff, cynical, and grinning like he owns the world, gives him a sharp shove upward. You wince. The boy's body presses against the smouldering, crumbling brick walls. Every inch forward is a struggle between muscle and suffocating soot. You wonder how someone so young can bear the weight of such labour, the threat of darkness swallowing him whole. Fringe tidbit. Some chimney sweeps developed a peculiar superstition to cope with their perilous work. They believed that wearing a small bell or charm on their person would ward off evil spirits trapped inside the chimneys or protect them from the soot devil, a mythical creature said to lurk in the flue's darkness. Others would recite prayers or carry tokens of saints for luck, as if the unseen forces of the city held sway over their fates. The boy emerges minutes later, coughing violently, black soot flaking from his hair and clothes. His face is streaked with tears and grime. The master pats him on the back, laughs and tosses him a piece of stale bread. The boy eats greedily but looks hollow. You approach the sweep master. "Is this really necessary?" you ask, your voice tinged with disbelief. He chuckles darkly. "It's the way things are. This city needs clean chimneys. No chimney, no fire. No fire, no warm meal. No warm meal, no life. We don't have choices." You nod, absorbing the weight of his words. He's right, in a brutal way. You wander down the street and spot a small group of chimney sweep boys gathered around a fire barrel, trying to warm their frozen hands. They're trading stories, some about close calls, others about the rare kindnesses from a homeowner. One speaks of a lady who gave him an extra crust of bread, another of a grumpy old man who yelled at them but tipped well. You listen closely. Their tales paint a complex picture. Yes, hardship and danger, but also resilience, camaraderie, and a strange sense of pride in their work. Despite the city's neglect, these boys hold on to small victories and moments of joy. Scholarly debate. There is ongoing discussion among historians about the effectiveness of legislation aimed at ending child chimney sweepers. The 1840 and later 1875 Chimney Sweepers Acts tried to ban the use of children under a certain age and mandate inspections, but enforcement was lax, and many sweepmasters ignored the laws. Some argue that economic necessity kept the practice alive longer than it should have, while others highlight growing public awareness and activism as catalysts for eventual reform. As you move on, your heart aches thinking of the dangers these children face daily. Not just the risk of physical injury, cuts, burns, suffocation, but also the long-term effects. Respiratory diseases like chimney sweeps cancer, a brutal form of scrotal cancer linked to soot exposure, first documented in the 18th century. The risks were invisible but deadly. You pass a neighbourhood school where some of the sweep boys catch a rare glimpse of normal childhood. Reading, writing and laughter. It's a fragile oasis in the midst of relentless toil. Some boys get lucky, eventually escaping the trade. Others never do. In a nearby tavern, you overhear a conversation among men debating the morality of using children for such work. One argues it's cruel and barbaric, another says it's the price of progress. They sip beer and ignore the blackened faces on the streets outside. You think about your own work and hardships. The children's suffering is a mirror of the city's soul, tough, unforgiving, yet unwilling to break completely. Night falls and the city's gas lamps flicker to life, casting eerie shadows over soot-smeared faces. The chimney sweep boys retreat to cramped rooms or alleyways, their bodies weary but their spirits unbroken. You find a spot to sit, the weight of the day pressing down. You recall the boy climbing the chimney, the soot devil's superstitions, and the slow, painful reforms that might one day end this brutal chapter of the city's history. For now, you breathe in the cold night air, filled with coal smoke and hope, and prepare to face tomorrow's trials. The day darkens and London's fog thickens again, settling like a damp, oppressive blanket over the streets. You find yourself walking slower now, shoulders hunched against the chill and the weight of the city's endless turmoil. The gas lamps flicker uncertainly, casting long, wavering shadows that mingle with the mist. Every corner seems to harbour whispers, secrets, and the unseen. The evening news, well, what counts as news in this era, is spreading fast through word of mouth and the few printed sheets sold by ragged street hawkers. You hear murmurs of terror and mystery, tales of a shadowy figure stalking the East End, a man called Jack the Ripper, a killer whose identity remains unknown, whose motives are whispered but never confirmed, whose crimes have gripped the city in a cold grip of fear. You stop near a tavern, the warm glow inside spilling onto the street, laughter and clinking glasses muffled but inviting. Outside, a small crowd gathers around a newsboy who's shouting headlines to anyone who'll listen. Another victim found, Blackchapel in panic, Jack strikes again. You shuffle closer, intrigued despite yourself. The details are chilling but vague. Another woman murdered in the dark, her body left in a horrific state. The word unsolved hangs heavy in the air. No arrest, no closure, just fear and speculation. Historical fact. Between August and November of 1888, at least 5 women, known as the Canonical Five, were brutally murdered in London's Whitechapel district. The killings were marked by mutilations and surgical precision, sparking widespread panic. Despite extensive police investigations, Jack the Ripper's identity was never discovered, making it one of history's most infamous cold cases. You glance around the crowd. Faces reflect a mix of horror and fascination. Some speculate wildly about doctors, foreigners, or the wealthy elite. Others whisper about curses or the curse of the city itself. Theories fly like the fog, thick and intangible. Fringe tidbit. Some contemporary accounts suggested the killer might have had medical or surgical training because of the precise mutilations. This sparked rumours that he was a doctor, a butcher, or even a member of the royal family. Others whispered about secret societies or occult motives, fueling sensationalism in the press. The newsboy's voice grows louder. Beware the night, good folk. Lock your doors. Mind the shadows. You feel a shiver that isn't just from the cold. London at night isn't just dangerous because of the weather or the crime. It's dangerous because of what the darkness hides, and what it invites. You turn away from the crowd and continue down a narrow alley, your footsteps echoing on wet cobblestones. The street lamps flicker, the fog thickens. You think of the victims, women who lived on the fringes of society, ignored and forgotten. Their lives tragically ended in the shadows. A rat scurries past your foot. You jump. The city never truly sleeps. You pass a group of policemen. Their faces are grim. They move in pairs, their eyes scanning the darkness, hands resting on nightsticks. They offer a fleeting sense of safety, though you know their resources are stretched thin, their methods primitive by today's standards. The police work tirelessly, but the killer remains elusive. Fingerprints are unheard of, forensic science in its infancy. Investigations rely on witness accounts, often unreliable in a city where fear and superstition cloud judgment. Scholarly debate. Historians and criminologists debate the true number of Jack the Ripper's victims and whether all 5 canonical murders were by the same person. Some argue for multiple killers or copycats, while others see a single disturbed individual. The lack of definitive evidence keeps the case alive in public imagination even today. As you walk, you notice the unsettling normalcy of life continuing despite the horror. Children play with rag dolls, shopkeepers close their stalls, couples huddle for warmth. The city endures, even as darkness threatens. You pause outside a pub where laughter spills out, mingling with the smell of ale and roasted meat. Inside, patrons share stories, trying to distract themselves from the grim news. A man raises his glass to better days. You consider joining but decide against it. Tonight, you want silence more than company. Your thoughts drift to the victim. Women who sold what little they had, struggling against poverty, addiction and violence. Their names are whispered but often forgotten. You wonder if justice will ever come for them, or if their stories will be lost to the fog forever. The night deepens. The city's heartbeat slows but never stops. The fog swirls around you, carrying the scent of coal, sweat and fear. You pull your scarf tighter, quicken your pace, and head home. The gas lamps cast your shadow long and distorted on the walls. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere else, a clock tolls midnight. You reach your doorstep, safe for now, but the city's shadows linger in your mind. You know tomorrow will bring new challenges, new fears, new hopes. You close your eyes and listen to the city's restless sigh. And somewhere in the dark, Jack watches. You wake up feeling heavy, the city's grime clinging to your skin like an unwanted shroud. Today your path leads you not to the familiar streets or market stalls, but to the local workhouse, the grim institution that offers shelter to those who have nowhere else to turn. You approach the towering brick building, its windows barred and grimy, the air around it thick with despair. The heavy wooden doors creak open and you step inside, swallowed by the dim light and cold stone walls. A stern matron eyes you with a mix of suspicion and tired compassion, her lips pressed into a thin line. The workhouse isn't a home. It's a place designed to punish poverty itself. Here, the poor are kept under strict rules and hard labour, with dignity stripped away as efficiently as their freedom. The philosophy is clear. If poverty is made unbearably harsh, fewer will seek assistance, and society's burden will lessen. You're led down a narrow corridor where voices echo, some weeping softly, others muttering curses. The air is cold, heavy with the smell of unwashed bodies, damp clothing and stale food. You're shown to a large dormitory, rows of wooden beds stacked closely together. The mattresses are thin, the blankets worn. Strangers sleep side by side in uneasy. You settle on a hard cot, grateful for the roof over your head, but unsettled by the oppressive atmosphere. The warden's eyes are everywhere, watching for disobedience, unrest, or escape attempts. Historical fact: workhouses in Victorian England were institutions established under the Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834. Intended to deter the able-bodied poor from relying on public assistance, they offered shelter and food only under strict and often harsh conditions, including mandatory labour. Families were often separated, and the daily regimen was brutal. You're summoned to the workroom, a grim hall where labourers toil endlessly. Your job: breaking stones, picking oakum, tearing apart old ropes, or working the laundry. The work is physically exhausting and monotonous, designed to be unpleasant enough to discourage dependence. Around you, others work silently. Some are elderly, broken by years of hardship. Others are children, their faces too young for the toil they endure. The youngest wears rags and has eyes full of confusion, clutching a rag doll as if it were a shield. Fringe tidbit: some workhouses developed a strange culture of secret signals and small rebellions. Hidden messages passed between inmates, covert alliances formed to share extra food, or acts of quiet sabotage against overseers. These small acts of resistance were life-affirming in an otherwise bleak existence. You eat a meagre meal, thin gruel and a slice of coarse bread. The food is enough to keep you alive, but nothing more. The dining hall is noisy, filled with the clatter of dishes and the murmur of resigned voices. Conversations are rare. Most keep to themselves, eyes downcast. Later you attend a church service held by a solemn chaplain who preaches about sin, redemption, and the moral duty of the poor to accept their station. His words feel hollow against the backdrop of hardship. Scholarly debate. Historians debate the social impact of the workhouse system. Some argue it was a necessary evil that forced able-bodied poor to work and reduced public expenditure. Others contend it institutionalized cruelty, perpetuated poverty and traumatized countless families. The debate often centers on whether the workhouse was reformative or punitive. You overhear a whispered conversation between two inmates about an upcoming escape plan. The risks are enormous. Punishments for runaways were severe, often involving imprisonment or corporal punishment. Yet, desperation breeds courage. Night falls, and you return to your cot, the hard mattress pressing into your aching back. Outside, the city's distant noises fade, replaced by the muffled sobs and restless shifting of those around you. Sleep is fitful, haunted by dreams of freedom and the harsh reality of confinement. You think about the thousands who live this cycle, forced into institutions designed to break them, yet often broken only in body, never in spirit. You vow to remember the stories whispered in these halls, the resilience hidden beneath layers of soot and sorrow. For in a city as unforgiving as London, survival is more than endurance. It is an act of quiet rebellion. You wake the next morning with a dull ache behind your eyes and the taste of yesterday's gruel lingering unpleasantly on your tongue. After the harsh confines of the workhouse, you decide to seek some distraction. A brief escape from the relentless grind of Victorian London. But entertainment here? It's a curious thing. A blend of joy, absurdity, and often downright misery. You make your way to the local theatre, a dim and cramped space that promises an evening of amusement to those who can afford the price of admission. The facade is weathered, the paint peeling, but the crowd gathering outside is lively. Voices raised in anticipation or complaint about the previous night's performance. You squeeze in among the audience, your eyes adjusting to the flickering gaslight illuminating the modest stage. The show begins with a puppet performance. At first it seems harmless, a simple tale of a clever fox and a foolish rooster. But as the puppeteer's shrill voice pierces the air and the strings jerk violently, you begin to suspect this is less entertainment and more a test of endurance for the ears. The children in the audience squirm, some stifle giggles, others cry softly. You try not to imagine what it must feel like to be trapped in those wooden bodies, forced to enact such. Next comes a peculiar opera. Historical fact: Victorian London was famous for its vibrant and often raucous entertainment scene, ranging from highbrow theatre to music halls and variety shows. The quality varied wildly, with some performances celebrated for their artistry, while others were infamous for being painfully bad. Puppet shows and melodramas were popular among working-class audiences seeking affordable amusement. The crowd's reactions are a patchwork of boredom, amusement, and mild agony. Some patrons heckle the performers, others cheer with surprising enthusiasm despite the cacophony. The atmosphere is chaotic but alive. You notice a group of travelling performers setting up a small booth offering miracle cures and psychic readings. It's a carnival of hope and gullibility, a reminder that in this city of smoke and soot, people will grasp at any straw to brighten their lives. Fringe tidbit: some music halls in Victorian London became notorious for bawdy humour and risque performances that scandalised the upper classes but delighted the masses. The lines between entertainment, social commentary and mild subversion were often blurred, giving rise to early forms of satire and protest art. You step outside during the interval and inhale deeply, grateful for the fresh, if still foggy, air. The streets buzz with chatter, vendors selling roasted chestnuts, children chasing one another, couples huddled close against the cold. A street magician performs nearby, captivating a small crowd with card tricks and sleight of hand. You watch as he pulls a coin from behind a skeptical child's ear, earning delighted gasps. For a moment, the city's grime and hardship fade. Yet, as you wander back into the theatre, you can't shake a lingering unease. The entertainment, for all its faults, is also a mirror to the city itself. Unpredictable, rough around the edges, and tinged with a melancholy that laughter alone cannot dispel. You think of the jesters you once read about, figures who walked the fine line between comedy and tragedy, using humour to survive, and survive to comment on the world. Perhaps these performers are their spiritual descendants. The night stretches on, the performances growing stranger, more chaotic. A clown stumbles onto the stage, his painted smile wide but eyes sad. His antics bring reluctant smiles to some faces, but you sense a deeper story behind his laughter. As the final act concludes, a poorly executed tragedy involving a ghost and a love lost, you stand, stretching cramped muscles and preparing to leave. The street lamps outside flicker uncertainly, the fog thickening once more. You step into the night, the city's sounds swirling around you, a distant accordion, a dog barking, footsteps hurried and heavy. Entertainment here is a balm, however rough, for a city bruised by hardship. And you? You carry the echoes of laughter and song as you disappear into the shadows, ready for whatever dawn brings. You're finally back where the day began, your room, your refuge, if you can call it that. The bed that awaits you isn't what modern comforts imagine. It's a shared mattress, stretched over a lumpy wooden frame stuffed with straw horsehair that hasn't seen fresh air in months. The sheets, if there are any, are thin and worn, their colour faded into a dull, indistinct grey. This bed is not just a place to sleep, it's a testament to endurance, a silent witness to your daily battles. The room itself is cramped, barely large enough for the bed and a small chest that holds your meagre belongings. The window is cracked, letting in the city's ever-present fog and a draught that chills your bones. The walls are stained with soot, and the floorboards creak underfoot, often harbouring unwelcome visitors. You lower yourself carefully, mindful of the creaks that might wake your roommates, other tenants who share this rented space in this sprawling tenement. There are 3 of them tonight. A coal miner with a cough like a grating saw, a laundress whose hands are raw and cracked, and a young mother cradling a restless child. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, dirt, and stale bread. You pull the thin blanket over yourself, feeling the faint sting of lice bites along your arms. It's a familiar discomfort, one you've learned to accept as part of the package. You shift, trying to find a position that will soothe the aches in your back and joints, worn down by years of labour and exposure to the element. Historical fact. Overcrowding in Victorian London's poorest neighbourhoods was extreme. It wasn't uncommon for multiple families to share a single room, and beds were often rented out to multiple people in shifts, known as hot bedding. This practice was especially prevalent in lodging houses and boarding rooms catering to transient or working class residents. As you settle in, you listen to the muffled sounds around you, the soft breathing of your roommates, the distant clatter of horses' hooves on cobblestones, and the occasional cough echoing through the thin walls. Outside, the city never truly sleeps. The hum of gas lamps, the chatter of late-night passers-by, and the distant tolling of church bells create a constant soundtrack. You remember the stories of people who shared your plight, those who endured the same cramped quarters and harsh conditions. Some found solace in the camaraderie of neighbours, while others were consumed by despair. It's a delicate balance, this shared humanity in hardship. Fringe tidbit. In some lodging houses, beds were even rented by the hour to workers needing a quick rest between shifts, although seeking privacy in a city where space was scarce. The concept of personal space was a luxury few could afford, and many learned to sleep standing, sitting, or in crowded communal areas. You feel the weight of the day pressing down, your muscles protesting the long hours of toil. Your cough returns, rasping and unrelenting. You reach for a piece of cloth to cover your mouth, knowing that illness is a constant companion in these close quarters. Despite the discomfort, there is a strange comfort in the familiarity. The bed is yours. In a way, a small claim in a city that often feels indifferent. It holds your dreams, your fears, and the faint hope that tomorrow might bring something better. You think about the few possessions you have. A worn coat, a tattered book, a small wooden charm given by a kind stranger. These objects carry stories, anchors in a sea of uncertainty. The night deepens, and you drift between wakefulness and sleep, the sounds of the city and your roommates blending into a lullaby of survival. Your thoughts wander to distant places, dreams of fresh air, wide open fields, and a life unburdened by soot and struggle. You cling to those dreams as the bed creaks beneath you, the thin blanket barely shielding you from the cold. In the stillness, you make a quiet promise to yourself, to endure, to hope, to rise. 'Cause in Victorian London, a bed might be rented, a room shared, and comfort scarce, but the human spirit is something no hardship can fully take away. You close your eyes, the bells on your coat jingling softly in the dark, and surrender to the night. You awake not knowing if it's dawn or dusk, your senses dulled and body heavy from exhaustion and the persistent cough that rattles your chest like a loose chain. The bed beneath you is lumpy and cold, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of last night's grime. But you're awake. You've survived another night in Victorian London, a city that demands endurance above all else. You rise slowly, muscles aching and joints protesting, and you listen for the familiar sounds of the city. Outside, horse hooves clatter on the cobblestones. Vendors begin to shout their wares. Children's laughter, raw and ragged, pierces the fog. Life, relentless and unforgiving, presses forward. You glance in a cracked mirror propped against the wall. Your face is smeared with soot and streaked with sweat, your eyes shadowed but alive. It's a face shaped by hardship, but it belongs to you. You dress in worn clothes, threadbare but clean enough, and pull your scarf tight against the ever-present chill and stench. The city awaits, busy, chaotic, dangerous, but it also offers moments of unexpected humanity and connection. As you step outside, you're greeted by the same fog and grime, the same cacophony of sounds and smells. Yet, there's a strange comfort in the routine, in knowing that while the city can break bodies and spirits, it cannot completely erase hope. You walk the familiar streets, nodding to neighbours and recognising faces in the crowd. Some are new, some old friends, all bound by the shared struggle of survival. You pause near the market where the pie stall offers its wares, the butcher's boy pushes his cart, and the chimney sweep boys prepare for another day of perilous labour. Each carries their own stories, fears, and small victories. You reflect on the dangers faced and the resilience shown, the choking fog, the filth, the poverty, the cruelty, but also the laughter in taverns, the kindness of strangers, and the quiet determination to endure. You think about the people lost, those who never woke up again, swallowed by disease, despair, or the city's many hazards. Their memories echo in the fog, in the cracked walls, and in the whispered stories passed down through generations. But you are here, awake, breathing, ready to face whatever comes next. As the sun finally attempts to break through the haze, casting a pale light over the soot-stained rooftops, you allow yourself a moment of peace. The city may be unforgiving, but within it beats the heart of millions who refuse to surrender. You inhale deeply, letting the cold air fill your lungs, and whisper a promise to yourself, to live, to fight, to hope. Because sometimes, that's all survival truly is. Now, as the city's bustle fades into the distance and the evening's quiet settles in, it's time to rest. You've travelled through the foggy streets, faced the harsh realities of survival, and glimpsed the resilience of a city and its people. Though the days are long and the nights colder still, remember this: you are not alone. Breathe slowly. Let the weight of the day ease from your shoulders. Imagine the soft glow of a candle flickering gently, the faint hume of the city's heartbeat slowing with you. Feel the comforting warmth of a simple blanket wrapped around you, shielding you from the chill. In this quiet, find solace. The world may be vast and often unkind, but here, in this moment, you are safe. Your breath steadies, your heart softens. Dreams will come soon, carrying you to places beyond soot and struggle, places of peace, hope, and rest. Let your thoughts drift like the mist that cloaks Victorian London, softening edges and blurring hard truths. It's okay to let go, to close your eyes and slip gently into sleep. The city will wait for you to rise again. And when you wake, you will carry strength born from survival, courage forged in hardship, and a spirit unbroken. Sleep well, traveller. The dawn will greet you when you are ready.